McCurdy very much for the very kind invitation. I think this is actually the first formal time that I've ever been part of your group here with the Sustainable Cotton Group, and I'm very honored to be here, and I hope I can add some other information to the very good program here. They asked me to talk about a couple of things. Maybe I'll start off with this one. And some of the work we've been doing on soil quality or soil health and soil management in general, and then also a couple of things on related to some opportunities that you all might have and might want to take advantage of it at some point. And I've prepared some handouts here. I don't think I'll give these out right now, but you're welcome to take these, and they summarize a lot of the information that I have. I want to start off with this first page here. You want to sit down? Come on, sit down. It'd be more relaxed if you want here, but I'm going to show some things, so you got to get close up here. The first thing is actually a TED Talk, and I'm going to use that as my introduction this morning. It's a very intriguing presentation. The guy is named John Warner. He's a chemist. I don't think he's at a university anymore. He's in a private company. He's got something like 200 patents. But I use this as an introduction because one of the things he says in introducing his own presentation on the TED Talk video is that he's going to share with you, as I am this morning, the depth of his experience. I'm going to share some data, some information, some research. But as Dan, Pete, and Bob, I've been fortunate enough in my own career to be part of the land-grant university, the public university of California, or a public university here. And I also have had the great luxury of seeing and being exposed to a lot of different experiences in my career that I want to share with you a little bit related to soil management. So it's in the spirit of that TED Talk that John Warner gives that I want to encourage us to think about some alternatives that maybe are not here and now today anyway, but they might have a role down the road. And that's, you'll see where I'm going with that concept in a minute here. What I want to share with you has two sources, or two roots, two reasons for my using it. First of all, there is a growing experience base, and you've probably seen this in some of the farm press and the popular press newsletters and newspapers that are out there. There are a lot of farmers around the country who are now getting a lot of visibility for some changes that they're seeing as a result of their crop soil management practices that are now resulting in some rather astonishing benefits for them. And I don't want to get into the details here. These are all people from out of California. By the way, we have this same kind of a table now that we've now developed and are creating for California farmers. So there's a growing experience base that not only is doing these so-called soil health, soil care practices now for a number of years, but it's this area down here that I want to call your attention to. These farmers, these 5 folks here on this chart, they're not only sustaining yields, they're reducing costs, they're reducing inputs, and they're increasing the efficiencies of their system here. So this is getting a lot of visibility, all right? This was actually out of the equivalent of Western Farm Press in one of the Iowa newspapers here, but there's this experience base that exists out there, right? Farmers are paying attention in pretty intense ways to what they're doing with the soil, right? That's my first point here. Now, right here locally, all right, just 2 weeks ago, up the road here, 5 miles, no more than that around here, some of you know Alan Sano and Jesse Sanchez. We hosted a field day at their farm where they too, over the last 13, 14 years, have been really taking on a dedicated attention and focus on soil care. And they're seeing some dramatic things out there right now. I don't think except for Dan Monk, nobody else was there, I don't think here, but I don't want to go into it a lot. But one of the benefits is they're reducing fertilizer inputs by about 50%. All right, what they do is they have an off-season winter cover crop, that they dedicate the water to, they grow, they dedicate the planting costs and all this. But over the long haul, they're now seeing some benefits from that, not the smallest of which is nitrogen accumulation in the soil. So there are people that are looking at these systems. Another thing, I don't want to dwell on Jesse too much here, but the guy was invited to the White House last November, all right, as one of the 11 farmers or people around the country who are working on climate-smart agricultural systems. It was a very nice honor for the guy. And if you think about it, how is what they're doing climate-smart? Well, Bob talked about capturing sunlight energy and converting it to plant biomass or photosynthate. If they're doing that in the winter, they're taking carbon out of the atmosphere. They're storing nitrogen if they have nitrogen-fixing cover crops in their system. So over the long haul, they're going to be capturing more carbon and nitrogen that's going to be stored in their soil. So that's one thing. They're also reducing diesel fuel, which is the smaller part of it there, but it's not a trivial thing. Now, after, above and beyond that experience base that I think is fair to say is growing and getting a whole lot of publicity around our country, all of you probably, or many of you probably have heard about the NRCS USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. Their big kick right now, since 2012, they introduced what they call the Soil Health Campaign. It's not a program, it's not an initiative, it's actually a campaign, a national USDA thing that they're trying to get out there to increase the awareness, the understanding of the importance of our nation's soils for our future and for security. And if you think about this, these are the 4 boiled down principles that NRCS has come up with that sort of are the core of their message. Minimize disturbance to the soil, maximize diversity in terms of rotation of species that are grown, and also the diversity of the soil biology underneath the plants. Keep living roots in the soil as much as possible, and keep the soil covered as much as possible. So these are not just flimsy, pull them out of the air kinds of principles. There's research base, there's information that exists that supports those principles there. To wrap up my first point, and the first source of my message to you this morning is, I'm going to be a little bit provocative here and ask the question, how many of these things are really used in the systems that are common and commonly used today? I mean, there's a big challenge, right? There's a big opportunity to look at, explore, and develop and evaluate to see if any of this can matter in the soils in the context that we have here in California. So it's an open question there, but I want you to think about that a little bit now. If you also think about it, my own mentor is a guy out of South Dakota State University. He, by the way, and it's been pointed out to me, well, Jeff, South Dakota is a small state, but the guy is he's a specialist or a researcher like us in the South Dakota Hall of Fame, but he's big on talking about natural systems, mimicking, emulating natural systems or Mother Nature in some respect, right? If you think about it, natural systems, forests or places that, that aren't managed, they harvest the maximum amount of sunlight. They don't have a lot of leakiness or emissions. They have great diversity for their environment. They don't export a lot, and they make use of water and nutrients very efficiently, and they don't do tillage. So there's sort of like a corresponding connection between some of the NRCS principles and these kind of principles that might be associated with emulating or mimicking natural systems. All right, so I put that out to share with you this morning as something that is out there, that's happening. This campaign is underway. We'll talk a little bit more later on about the opportunities for that, but it's getting a lot of visibility. All right, the second point comes from actually our research. And, Bob, Dan, and I have been working down in 5 Points for about 16 years now. This is a study that's down at the field station there, where we've taken these principles 16 years ago and said, okay, can we make sense out of them? Can we try them? What if we push the package as far as we can go? What happens? Are we going to get benefits? Is there value in them? What are the changes that occur? Those kind of questions we've done. So what we have down there in 5 points, we started with tomatoes, cotton. We did about 12 years of a tomato cotton rotation because it was very common. Many of you grow those crops here, and it's still common to that extent here. We don't do any tillage to after harvest here of the tomatoes. In some plots, no tillage except for shredding the cotton and pulling it out in the roots here for marginal pink bollworm compliance here. And then we add cover crops to those systems. So we got no-till, these will be swapped here. This will have cotton in it next year. This will have tomatoes. We've now diversified the systems and the rotations a little bit there. But we deliberately now grow cover crops in the systems, in 2 of the systems, to try to capture more of that winter sunlight and get more organic matter into the soil. We compare those with the conventional tillage, the standard tillage systems with and without cover crops. So we have 4 systems. No-till with cover crops, no-till without cover crops, conventional tillage with and without cover crops. So we've done this for a long time now. Thanks very much. And it looks hairy, all right? This is the, one winter time where we've seeded the cover crop, and lo and behold, you can, no-till seed a cover crop into that residue, but it's starting to get, matching those principles here. We're achieving some of the goals that we started out to achieve there. It's not easy, and we've had a lot of learning curve issues here. But and it's not regular. It's not automatic. You're going to get a lot of biomass out of the cover crop. Look at this. These are the amounts of, pounds of dry matter of cover crop per acre over the first 14 years of the years. The first year we irrigated the cover crop, so we got a lot of growth out of it. As far as I know, Sano Farms, they irrigate the cover crop because they value it that much that they treat its establishment and growth as part of their pre-irrigation in the fall. We then said, well, wait a minute, we're not sure that farmers are going to dedicate water, that they're going to go on this trade-off of growing a cover crop with precious water in the San Joaquin Valley. So from then on, we didn't irrigate the cover crop. And you can see down this year, 2007, if it doesn't rain or if it rains at the wrong part of the year, we got 27 pounds of dry matter per acre, all right, 0, right? So it's very variable. Overall, however, we've gotten about today, up until today, I'd say we've gotten over 30 tons of dry matter per acre, just on the winter inputs of cover crops. About 40% of that's carbon, so that's probably, 8 or 9 tons of carbon that have been added to the soil just by virtue of capturing radiation energy in the wintertime there. So that's one thing we tracked and we monitored here. Another thing that we've done to try to keep working on these principles, we said, okay, if you don't do tillage, for instance, all right, and we simulated a dairy silage thing. You go from wheat or triticale here, and you would prepare the ground for corn in the summertime. If you don't do tillage, you actually end up reducing the evapotranspir, or the evaporation of soil water. And we've actually measured that. It's not a lot, but 4 or 5 tillage passes in the spring, you're losing about an inch of water. You're exposing more soil surface to drying, and you're losing. That's not anything out of the ordinary. They've seen that in Kansas and Nebraska as well. So if you reduce tillage, you save water on those tillage passes there. This is actually a round table or a task force that's part of the state. I don't know if it's not a government agency, but it's kind of a consensus-based roundtable. I didn't put the source of this. I'm sorry here. But what they do now in this report is they call attention to the various nodes or the various places where in the hydrologic cycle in California where water exists, in rainfall, in lakes, in rivers, in reservoirs, in canals. And they say that there's one node on this drawing here that is not really as appreciated or recognized for its importance, and that's the soil here. And so can we, through these management practices, increase the ability of the soil to take water, to have water move throughout a soil profile, and to be stored in that soil profile to advantage to farming? Right? That's another question we're working on right now. Again, this is the guy up close and personal, Dwayne Beck. He's kind of a provocative, in-your-face kind of a guy, but his challenge to us, that gets back to these principles here, is not only can you work to improve the soil, but can you increase water use efficiency? Can you, in essence, make more water go through the plant, through transpiration, than is lost through evaporation through the soil? And that's the challenge that we've also been working on here. Another farmer, a young guy, he's no longer working in tomatoes. He used to work up in Los Banos. Danny Ramos held a field day, and what he was interested in, again, this guy is a tomato grower dedicated to using cover crops. The same idea, recognizing the value there. His motivation was related to soil moisture movement across the entire tomato bed. He was concerned that the soils were becoming tight, and that he wanted to use the cover crops as organic matter input to increase soil water movement there. And I think that's another rationale for some of the things we're working on here. Go ahead here. Now, we're related to cotton. We've struggled. All right, I'd be the first one to recognize and to admit to you all that the first years of this study, 1990 or 2000, 2003, in that area, we struggled mightily getting a stand. All right, we couldn't get uniform stand with populations without skips, and it wasn't very pretty. Since then, and one of the things that I have in the handout here is an article in here that summarizes sort of some of the recent work. This is it's an article where the last 5 or 6 years, I don't think we've seen any yield declines in cotton with the no-till system compared to the conventional tillage system. So you can take a look at this, and it talks a little bit about how we've done that. Some of the issues that we faced early on there. And we're not getting, that's not the 5-bale yield there. I think we've got a lot to learn, at least I do, in terms of in-season management of cotton, but we're not getting a failed crop either. This is, after those early years of struggle, we learned how to plant into residue, and we're able to get populations and establish plants in the field. So that's one small measure of success here. To come back to the reducing the evaporation here, if you keep a mulch or a cover over the soil, remember one of those principles that NRCS talks about? You can also reduce the amount of soil water that evaporates in season to the equivalent of maybe 4 or so inches in a normal summer San Joaquin Valley crop. So you got 4 inches related to this mechanism, 4 inches to reducing tillage, or another inch related to tillage reduction. 4 or 5 inches, that's maybe 15% of what you would be putting on in the whole season. It's not trivial. It's not zero anymore. All right. Now, let's do a break here. Before I come to the last part of this, I want to do a little, this is a demonstration here to Dan, maybe we'll put this over there, all the way over there. What I did this morning, and I encourage you to come up, and if you want to stand up, you can, you're welcome to. All right. These 4 trays of soils come from, I just collected them yesterday afternoon from down at 5 Points. These 2 are the standard till systems that have been managed with normal conventional tillage for the whole length of this period. These 2 are what we call the no-till cover crop system. You can see we've been the last few years, we tried to diversify. We have garbanzos and sorghum in the rotation now. It's not just tomatoes and cotton, but you don't need me to tell you that these soils now look quite a bit different, all right? Just from observing them, right? There are a lot of different things that we can make as observations here. We've measured differences in these soils now too, all right? We know that the soil with the no-till and the carbon, with the cover crop, it has increased the carbon, particularly in the top 6 inches, but in that top 1 foot as well. Increased significantly. This soil has about 0.7% organic matter or the equivalent of carbon. This is close to almost double now in that top foot. All right, so that's one change that's happening. The total nitrogen, remember I told you Jesse and Alan are reducing fertilizer inputs. The total N tends to go up with total C, total carbon. So we've actually, through maybe legumes or capturing nitrogen, I'm not sure what that would be, but there's more nitrogen in this soil as well here right now.
How many years is that?
16 years.
16
so
years.
these are the results of 16 years. Now, remember what I told you about Danny Ramos, the guy that was a tomato farmer? He's interested interested in improving water movement in his soil. So let's maybe do a little kind of a show and tell here. I have not done anything other than shoveling these soils into these trays yesterday. And we'll take a couple of similarly sized. Dan, you want to come up and be my assistant, please? All right, you get to put these. All right, you can choose your own there, but I'm going to try to find a couple of those. They are similar. Don't hold on. Similar size to there. And on the count of 3, we'll just drop them. This is sort of a hokey show and tell aggregate stability. I don't want to get too much dramatic here with you, but, well, I will here right now, but this is important. I don't know if you guys will ever be part of this, but there is a guy who is going around California right now. He's a very, very interesting guy. His name is Peter Donovan, and you can look at this. He's a private guy. He's out there. He's working primarily with range farmers, all right, the hilllands farmers and everything. But what can you do to improve rangeland soils? That's the premise. Can we store carbon, get it out of the atmosphere in agriculture or managed soils? That's where he's coming from. But he presents it in various ways. I went to one of the workshops that he did for a group over in the San Jose area maybe a couple months ago, and he actually, said something like, soil aggregates are the foundation of our society. That's the over-the-top part, but if you think about it, how utterly important soil is. And one of the articles that I have in a handout here for you too is there's a growing recognition that there may be coming a time when the genetic improvements of crop improvement plateau, and we might be needing the health, the resilience of the soil to be developed at a greater extent if we want to sustain the productivity. So I'll put that out as an idea there for you to consider. But there are people that are really starting to think about these things. And how do we get to that improved soil production state there? All right, so and Peter Donovan is somebody like that. And I'll come back to that when I talk about the demonstration network in a minute here. But let's do the demonstration. All right, so Dan, 1, 2, 3. Now, can you all see this? What are our observations? What are we observing here? Come on now. I mean, it's pretty dramatic. Do you agree with me? Mm-hmm. Poor Dan's soil. It took in a lot of water, though, didn't it, Dan?
Yeah, and fast.
What happened to Dan's soil?
Broke up.
Broke up? So now, this is not intuitive here. Why would one maybe be better or desirable than the other?
Have more runoff.
This one, which has more runoff?
Well, this would have a lot more
all right,
runoff.
so spot on. I think you're right. Yeah, we don't have runoff issues here because we get so little rain in the winter. But you're right. All right. Yeah. If their soil is going to disperse and spread apart, it's going to seal off. It's going to create a crust, and you're going to get water movement over the surface. It's runoff. So that could be one thing. I agree with you there. I didn't gimmick this up here. This is still taking water there. It's crumbling and it'll break down. The premise would be that, yeah, the stability of the aggregates over here is higher. It's better. The porosity, we're measuring this. This coming year, we're actually going to measure these kinds of hydraulic properties on these soils now, finally. But the supposition would be that there could be benefits of this thing. Now, my question to you would be, how has this been achieved? How did this happen? Why did it happen? What happened to this soil after 16 years that resulted in it being quite visibly different? Again, these were collected 30 feet from the other one.
Organic matter.
But what did organic matter do? What?
Bound the matrix.
It bound the matrix, all right? I think you're spot on there. The glues, just the connections, the rebar kind of holding things together in a physical way, but also in a chemical way through some of the soil biology, all right? The exudates, the stuff that comes out of the dead microorganisms and that kind of stuff. By the way, we've measured these kinds of things too. Bacteria and fungi and nematodes, the populations are distinctly different now in these two soils, that it's kind of interesting and exciting. So, a dramatic kind of a show and tell demo here for you to think about here. Now, where did I should go back to the thing here. Let's see. Okay, now we're over here. I'm sorry. Let me just wrap this up right. We'll just use this angle here. I think you can all see this, and on this, in the sake of time here. Now, what I want to introduce to you here is kind of the evolution of where the research, the principles, the campaign that NRCS is involved with, and a whole lot of partners. And I would like to invite, I don't know who the official sustainable cotton person would be, if it's Dan or Pete or Marsha or whoever, but I would like to invite your group to become part of this if you're interested, and we can go through more of the details about what would be involved. It's not any formal membership or anything like that. It's just an opportunity to learn, and it's a discovery process, frankly. All right, what we're trying to do in this farm demonstration evaluation network is first of all showcase the existing experience of folks like Dan. All right, what are you doing? How are you managing your systems? What have you seen? What have you had to negotiate? What improvements, what challenges have you seen? So it's really like the Alan Sano and the Jesse Sanchez, showcasing pioneering excellence, if you will. That's one of the goals of the network. Another goal is to just say, okay, David Britz, are you interested in doing some kind of a demonstration or something? All right, we'll help with certain kind of monitoring and augment your learning in that process. And so there will be a demonstration evaluation component of this. Again, it's the same kind of stuff that you've been doing in your own comparisons, but we might add to the soil as another concept. And some of these principles, how do you do further reductions in tillage disturbance? What happens if you get more residue? Those kind of goals could be part of that. So there'll be performance monitoring. It's not just necessarily, doing something, walking away, and then saying, well, it didn't look so good. It's, getting some information out of this. Sharing the information like you're doing in Sustainable Cotton, trying to develop web available, information that could be used there, and also collecting some information that could be shared together through the different things. So that's where we're trying to go right now with this thing. And as I said here, I will give you the website. A couple weeks ago, Tom Willey is a farmer, an organic farmer over in Madeira, and he has an FM radio program the first Friday of every month. And for July, a couple weeks ago or last week, there were two of us who were in this hour-long interview on his radio program. I was there to talk about the demonstration network, and a woman named Renata Brillinger, who's with the California Climate, what is CalCan? I forgot what it stands for. California Climate Action Network or something like that. It's a NGO, but they're interested in developing policy issue information that can maybe sway and influence legislators, that kind of stuff. And so we were both talking about the same initiative. So if you want to hear the hour-long nitty-gritty of what's going on, there are 3 phases to what the state Cdfa is currently implementing. One is a kind of an easement program where they're trying to protect farmland. The second is the SWEEP, S-W-E-E-P, State Water Efficiency Enhancement Program, which all the farmers here are eligible for. Maybe you're already applied for that there, but it gets you extra money to improve your efficiency of irrigation. The third prong of the Cdfa program is the Healthy Soils Initiative, and that's what we talked about in this thing. And that has not been legislatively approved yet, but the idea would be that there would be incentive money that could be available to farmers who would be willing to try these kinds of management changes that not only improve the soil, it's not just healthy soils, but it's also climate smart greenhouse gas emissions practices there. So from what I understand about your particular group here over the years, and what I've learned through Pete and Dan and Bob, is that you're interested in these things. You're trying to move things forward, enhance the efficiency and the production performance of your systems. So if somebody on your project would be interested, I'd be more than glad to talk to you about this. And this would be a good hour-long radio program to listen. I'm not trying to promote it because I'm in there. But this stuff is going on around the country and indeed the world. The guy, Peter Donovan, he's really big on, and if any of you are really keen on any of the detail of what I'm talking about getting baseline and ongoing time course monitoring information, it's important. I wish that I had done more of this with a lot of the farmers that I've had the good fortune of working with over the years. We just didn't collect early on data to see how things really changed or didn't change. And that's an important part of this. So what Peter is part of here, there are 3 handouts. The Peter Donovan How to Do Monitoring on Farm, the NRCS Soil Quality Test Kit Guide. This is for those of you who are really, you know, gung-ho about doing some of this stuff. I provide these here. And then also just a summary about the principles of soil care or soil health from NRCS. So you're welcome to take any of that, or if you need more. But I don't want to, you know, minimize this. There's a lot going on. All right, there's this. You're going to be hearing much more about this. I think that's all I've got there. So it's an invitation that I'd like to follow up with the appropriate folks there down the road from your group here, if it's possible. And with that, any questions or comments?
How do you kill the cover crop to plant your crop?
Okay, his question, how do you kill the cover crop and plant the crop? Well, that's something also that we've tried a lot of different ways on that. What we've defaulted to, so imagine, last year we got a good rain, fairly good. And we got, the cover crop might have been this tall, right? A diverse mixture of triticale, rye, peas, beans, and some clovers in there. So it was bushy and you know, a mess, right? What we've done, first of all, is we will, I think last year we actually chopped it. We probably flail mowed it there, and that obliterates it down into very small pieces there. That's not the way I would normally, we would either do it with a stalk chopper, it cuts it and crimps it into about 7 or 8 inch pieces there, knocks it down on the soil there, and then we're not organic, so we are using herbicides and everything. We come back afterwards with an over-the-top herbicide, and then we plant into it. That's it.
Chopping and then herbicide.
Yeah, so yeah, that's right. But there are people, but I want to share with you, this is an interesting area there, because there are a lot of people who are working around the country right now with alternative management approaches for cover crops, all right? There's a roller, you know, you've probably all heard of this famous roller crimper. The Rodale Institute in Pennsylvania tries, well, they have gotten a lot of visibility for, you know, getting it out and being used there. It was developed 40 years ago in South America. What it is a drum, like a roller. It has blades of metal on it in a chevron or V-shaped pattern, and it does a darn good job of cutting and crimping the cover crop. And if the cover crop is at a stage of maturity where it's about flowering and going to set seed and everything, you can get a very good kill on the cover crop just mechanically. All right, we have not done that as much as we probably should have and stuck with that there. But there are folks in the organic arena who are working there. So a variety of ways. Flail mowing is the easy way to do it.
Well, that's my big concern is you have a window for your moisture if you're going to plant your moisture, and our ground tends to be heavy here.
I agree.
So you get it this big. By the time it dries out,
yeah,
you've actually dried out and you herbicide it, and then you've almost lost your moisture.
No, I can't agree with you more. And these kind of timing and horror stories, not here, but up north in Tracy, I've seen and I know about that. Yeah. So I'll give you an answer for where I think our research program might be going and how we're going to overcome that. But it may not be suitable for your particular situation there. What we're trying to do, and some of you know this already, you could say, well, Jeff, that's never going to happen. We're never going to do that. But we're trying to couple these kind of management approaches with a form of precision irrigation that is not widely used here. That's overhead center pivot. So we could overcome that and reestablish moisture in a very quick way. But that's, you know, that's not.
But see, then you've come back into you're putting more moisture on.
Yeah, you're right.
And we got the window of planting.
I know. That's so. I agree. It's not an easy, absolute, you know, management.
Because we might not even be able to get in and flail it until the end of March.
Yeah,
because of moisture concerns.
Yeah.
Without destroying your seed bed.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I understand, and I think that's something that.
Because I think like Jesse and them, they're coming in and transplanting.
That's right. That's an advantage.
So they are planting to moisture.
You're right, you're right. So they turn on the drip and they wet up the transplants and they're going. You're right. So, but you guys planting cotton into moisture, that's a harder challenge. That probably, frankly, was probably why we failed so utterly miserably early on.
Either
We
that or
didn't.
not let it get so big.
No, that's right. I mean, that's another thing. So you're right. In the old days, the idea that more was better. You get a big old gangly cover crop. That's not what they do at Sanoa now anymore. They manage it so it's workable, and they terminate it in January or February. So they're not fighting these things there. But I think you're on to some real.
Their ground is significantly larger than ours.
Yeah, see, these are other things that have to be figured out here. Anything else? No, I appreciate what you're saying. Well, so thanks very much then. I appreciate it. Here we go.